You sit at the kitchen table, lights dim, holding a crumpled lab report. One phrase burns into your eyes: high cholesterol. Your doctor's voice echoes, warning of heart attack and stroke. At the same time, your waistline has grown, your blood pressure has crept up, and your fasting sugar is no longer normal. It feels like your body is betraying you. But what if the true story behind cholesterol and metabolic syndrome is more hopeful and more surprising than you have ever been told? Jimmy Moore once held a similar sheet of paper. Overweight, exhausted, and frightened, he faced not just a number, but the possibility of a shortened life. Instead of accepting fear as his destiny, he asked a deeper question. Does this cholesterol number really tell my full story? That single question led him on a journey with physician Eric Westman, challenging what many of us have blindly believed about fats, cholesterol, and metabolic health. Metabolic syndrome is not just a textbook phrase. It is the tightening belt that no longer fits, the blood pressure cuff squeezing harder each year, the prescription list growing longer, elevated waist circumference, high blood sugar, raised triglycerides, low HDL, and hypertension start to cluster like storm clouds. You may feel guilty, as if it is a moral failure. In truth, it is often a sign of deeper metabolic confusion, not personal weakness. For decades, we have been told a simple story. Cholesterol is the villain, lower it at any cost, and you will be safe. You learn to fear eggs, red meat, and butter. Food companies proudly stamped low fat on sugary products as if removing fat erased danger. Yet, as this message spread, waistlines expanded, type 2 diabetes soared, and metabolic syndrome became an epidemic. Could it be that we have been fighting the wrong enemy? Imagine your arteries not as rigid pipes, but as living rivers, lined with delicate cells that respond to every meal you eat. Cholesterol is like tiny boats carrying essential building blocks, hormones, vitamin D, cell repair materials, through those rivers. In metabolic syndrome, the water becomes turbulent, inflamed, and sticky. Boats begin to crash and pile up. Perhaps the problem is not the number of boats, but the storm raging in the river. You likely know these three letters, LDL and HDL. One is called bad, the other good. Yet, in the world of metabolic syndrome, this simple label is not enough. LDL comes in different sizes, small, dense particles that slip into damaged artery walls more easily, and larger, fluffier ones that seem less harmful. HDL can act like a cleanup crew. Just knowing total cholesterol is like judging a whole city by its population, without asking who lives there or what they do. In metabolic syndrome, one marker stands out as a quiet siren: triglycerides. These are fats circulating in your blood, often elevated when your body struggles with sugar and refined carbohydrates. High triglycerides can signal that insulin, the hormone that ushers sugar into cells, is overwhelmed. It is like a highway jammed with delivery trucks honking and idling because the warehouses are already overflowing. Insulin resistance lies at the heart of metabolic syndrome. With every sugary drink, every refined snack, insulin knocks on your cell's doors, asking to store more energy. Over time, those doors begin to resist. It is as if your cells say, "We are full." The pancreas responds by shouting louder, releasing even more insulin. This chronic shouting fuels fat storage around your waist, raises blood pressure, and alters your cholesterol patterns from the inside. Most of us receive a single sheet of numbers once a year: total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides. Doctors often rush to the LDL line and circle it in red, but in people with metabolic syndrome, important clues hide in the pattern. High triglycerides with low HDL can be more alarming than a modestly elevated LDL. It is like reading only one sentence of a long letter and assuming you know the whole story. Researchers and clinicians, including Dr. Westman, often pay attention to ratios such as triglycerides divided by HDL. In general, a high triglyceride to HDL ratio can hint at insulin resistance and an abundance of small, dense LDL particles. While these numbers do not diagnose disease by themselves, they offer a different lens, closer to the metabolic roots than total cholesterol alone. Always discuss your personal results with your physician before drawing conclusions. Jimmy Moore once weighed over 400 pounds. His life was shrinking as his body expanded. Stairs felt like mountains, chairs felt fragile, and every mirror became an accusation. Doctors recommended medication and low-fat diets, yet his metabolic markers refused to improve. Instead of quietly fading into the statistics of metabolic syndrome, he chose to see himself as an experiment, determined to uncover what truly healed his body. Following conventional wisdom, Jimmy embraced low-fat foods, skim milk, fat-free cookies, and margarine instead of butter. Yet hunger stalked him constantly. His blood sugar spiked and crashed, leaving him exhausted and irritable. Metabolic syndrome thrives in this cycle of constant snacking and uncontrolled insulin. Like many patients, he realized that simply cutting fat without questioning sugar and starch was like trying to put out a fire while the gas line stayed open. Everything shifted when Jimmy encountered Dr. Eric Westman, an internal medicine physician who listened differently. Instead of focusing only on LDL, Dr. Westman asked about Jimmy's diet, hunger, and energy. He explained that for many people with metabolic syndrome, carbohydrates, especially refined ones, are like sparks on dry grass. By lowering carbs, he suggested, you can calm insulin, improve triglycerides, and sometimes see HDL rise. The message startled Jimmy. Eat more natural fats, not less. Butter, olive oil, avocados, even fatty cuts of meat, foods he had avoided, were now invited back, while sugar and white flour were asked to leave. The science behind this is evolving, but compelling. For many with insulin resistance, replacing refined carbohydrates with healthy fats can reduce triglycerides and shift LDL toward larger, less dense particles. Still, any major change should be discussed with your physician. As Jimmy lost weight on a lower carb, higher fat diet, something fascinating and sometimes frightening happened. His cholesterol numbers changed, but not always in the neat way he expected. HDL climbed and triglycerides dropped, both promising signs. Yet, at times, LDL rose, especially during rapid weight loss. This taught him that cholesterol is dynamic. When your body burns stored fat, more cholesterol can temporarily circulate in your blood, like furniture being moved out during a home renovation. When Jimmy's LDL climbed, alarm bells rang. Friends and doctors warned of arterial plaque and urgent medication. Yet, deeper testing revealed that his LDL particles were mostly large and buoyant, while markers of inflammation were low. Some experts reassured him that context mattered. His case reminds us not to panic over a single lab value without understanding patterns, particle types, and overall metabolic health. Decisions about medication must be made carefully with a qualified physician. What truly damages arteries? Many researchers now focus on chronic inflammation, a slow, smoldering fire inside blood vessels. In metabolic syndrome, high blood sugar, excess insulin, oxidative stress, and visceral fat around organs all add fuel. Cholesterol then becomes like soot sticking to damaged walls, not the original flame. Lowering soot can help, but without cooling the fire, the damage continues. To heal, we must look beyond a single number and address the sources of heat. For many with metabolic syndrome, sugary drinks and hidden fructose in processed foods play a powerful role. The liver, already busy, must turn excess fructose into fat, often leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Triglycerides rise, HDL falls, and insulin resistance worsens. It is as if the liver becomes a cluttered storage room packed with boxes it never asked for. Reducing sugary beverages is a simple, potent way to begin decluttering. Metabolic syndrome does not only live in lab data, it lives in small moments. The afternoon crash that sends you hunting for sweets, the shortness of breath on a single flight of stairs, the numb tingling in your feet. These whispers often precede louder alarms like type 2 diabetes or heart disease. Learning about cholesterol and metabolism is not an academic exercise. It is a way of reclaiming energy for your everyday life. When you hear your cholesterol is high, it can feel like a judgment on your character. Shame and fear creep in. Many patients confess they are afraid to eat in front of others, scrutinizing every bite. But numbers are information, not moral verdicts. In Jimmy's journey, he learned to see lab results as a dashboard, not a courtroom. You too deserve to view your metabolic markers with curiosity and hope instead of self-blame. For many with metabolic syndrome and high LDL, statin medications are proposed as a shield against heart disease. Research shows that statins can reduce cardiovascular events in certain high-risk groups. Yet some patients experience side effects, such as muscle aches or fatigue, and feel conflicted. Cholesterol Clarity does not tell you to take or refuse medication. Instead, it invites you to ask informed questions and collaborate with your physician to weigh benefits, risks, and personal preferences. Many people with metabolic syndrome feel pushed into or out of medications without a full conversation. True informed consent means understanding why a drug is recommended, what it can and cannot do, and what alternatives exist. In Jimmy's story, he gathered expert opinions, read research, and then made choices that fit his values. You have the same right to ask, what is the absolute benefit for someone like me? And how will we monitor my response and side effects? Among LDL particles, the small, dense ones behave differently. They can slip more easily into damaged artery walls and are more vulnerable to oxidation, chemical damage that triggers inflammation. Metabolic syndrome, with its high triglycerides and insulin resistance, tends to favor these smaller particles. Eating patterns that lower triglycerides, such as reducing refined carbohydrates for some people, may shift the balance toward larger, less dense LDL. This is one reason why the same LDL number can mean different things in different bodies. Think of oxidized LDL as rusted boats on your arterial river. When LDL particles are damaged by oxidative stress from smoking, chronic high blood sugar, or excess omega-6 oils in some processed foods, they become more likely to trigger immune reactions and plaque formation. Antioxidant-rich vegetables, quitting smoking, and stabilizing blood sugar may help reduce this oxidative burden. Rather than simply counting LDL, it can be more meaningful to ask, how rusty is the environment my cholesterol floats in? HDL is often praised as good cholesterol, but it is more like a fleet of recycling trucks. These particles help transport cholesterol from the periphery back to the liver for reuse or disposal. In metabolic syndrome, HDL commonly drops, leaving more debris behind in vessel walls. Lifestyle changes, such as physical activity, quitting smoking, and in some studies reduced carbohydrate intake, can help raise HDL for certain people. Watching HDL improve can feel like seeing your inner streets become cleaner. Imagine your metabolism as a grand orchestra. Insulin, triglycerides, HDL, LDL, blood pressure, and waist circumference are all instruments playing together. Metabolic syndrome is what happens when several of them fall out of tune at once. Instead of staring at one violin, the LDL line on your lab sheet, Cholesterol Clarity invites you to listen to the whole sound. Harmony returns not from silencing a single instrument, but from retuning the entire ensemble. In Jimmy's experience, a low-carbohydrate, higher-fat approach was a powerful tool for calming his metabolic storm. Many people with metabolic syndrome have seen improved triglycerides, HDL, and blood sugar on such plans. But tool is the key word. Not every body responds exactly the same, and not every person must or should go very low in carbs. The real message is to experiment responsibly, measure results, and adjust with medical guidance, rather than following any diet as a rigid belief system. When you hear cut the carbs, it can sound like a life sentence against all rice, fruit, or bread. Yet quality matters enormously. Refined carbs, white flour, sugar, sweetened drinks act quickly in the bloodstream, spiking glucose and insulin. Whole, minimally processed carbs, in appropriate amounts, may have a gentler impact, especially when paired with protein and fat. For metabolic syndrome, focusing first on removing the most rapidly absorbed carbs is often the most impactful step. In metabolic syndrome, protein can be a stabilizing anchor. Adequate protein helps preserve muscle mass, supports satiety, and moderates blood sugar swings when it replaces refined carbohydrates. In Jimmy's plan, meals began to center around unprocessed proteins such as meat, fish, eggs, and some dairy, surrounded by non-starchy vegetables and healthy fats. This shifted his body from constant sugar burning to a more balanced energy use. including better access to stored fat, butter melting on steamed vegetables, olive oil shimmering on a salad, and avocado sliced open, rich and green. For years, these images were framed as guilty pleasures. Yet, in Jimmy's story and in Dr. Westman's clinic, many metabolic syndrome patients improve lipids and insulin control when natural fats replace refined carbs. Saturated fat, once universally condemned, may not be equally harmful for every person. Your genetics, overall diet, and lifestyle all modify its effects. One more reason personalized guidance is crucial. While cholesterol clarity challenges low-fat dogma, it does not dismiss the value of plants. For metabolic syndrome, non-starchy vegetables act like colorful shields. Their fiber slows sugar absorption, their phytonutrients and antioxidants may help calm inflammation and oxidative stress. Picture each color, deep greens, reds, purples, as a different note of protection in your arterial symphony. Paired with protein and healthy fat, they become both medicine and pleasure. Another tool some metabolic syndrome patients explore, including Jimmy, is intermittent fasting, creating longer, regular breaks between meals. This can allow insulin to fall and give the body a chance to burn stored fat. However, fasting is not safe or appropriate for everyone, especially those on glucose-lowering medications or with certain medical conditions. If you are curious about fasting, it is vital to consult your physician and never stop medications on your own. You have heard it many times. Exercise is good for you, but for metabolic syndrome, moving your body does more than burn calories. Physical activity improves insulin sensitivity, helps raise HDL, and may lower triglycerides. It is like stirring a stagnant river, preventing sludge from settling. Even simple activities, brisk walking, light strength training, climbing stairs, performed consistently can transform the metabolic landscape inside you. Late nights, constant stress, and poor sleep can quietly sabotage metabolic health. When you are sleep deprived, hormones like cortisol rise, insulin sensitivity drops, and cravings for high sugar foods intensify. Chronic stress behaves like an invisible hand, turning up your internal thermostat, increasing blood pressure, and promoting abdominal fat. In treating metabolic syndrome, protecting your sleep and learning stress management are not luxuries. They are essential medications without a prescription bottle. Cholesterol Clarity shares stories of individuals with metabolic syndrome-like patterns who saw dramatic changes in their blood work. Triglycerides dropping from the 300s into normal range, HDL rising from the low 30s into the 50s or beyond, A1C, a marker of blood sugar control, gradually improving. These are not magic tricks, but the cumulative effect of dozens of daily choices. Yet even in success stories, the book reminds us, each person's journey requires medical oversight and patience. You may wonder, if this information is compelling, why do some official guidelines still focus so heavily on total cholesterol and low-fat advice? Medical science moves slowly and carefully. Large trials take years, even decades. Some guidelines reflect older studies that did not distinguish between particle sizes or individual responses. Cholesterol Clarity does not claim that all experts are wrong. Instead, it highlights that emerging evidence and real-world experiences can sometimes run ahead of formal recommendations. One goal of Jimmy's transformation was metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch smoothly between using sugar and fat for fuel. In metabolic syndrome, many people become trapped as constant sugar burners, requiring frequent carb-based snacks to feel normal. As he lowered carbs and improved insulin sensitivity, his body began tapping into stored fat more readily. This felt like being freed from a cage of constant hunger, a shift reflected not only in the mirror, but in his lipid profile. In the early months, Jimmy sometimes fixated on the scale. Metabolic syndrome often comes with years of yo-yo dieting, and each plateau feels like betrayal. But he learned that while weight is one measure, improvements in waist circumference, energy, blood pressure, triglycerides, HDL, and blood sugar are equally, if not more, important. Think of the scale as one instrument in your orchestra, not the entire performance. Celebrate every marker that moves in a healthier direction. Changing how you eat for metabolic health does not happen in a vacuum. There are family traditions, cultural foods, and social expectations. Jimmy describes navigating holidays filled with casseroles and desserts, learning to say no, thank you without rejecting loved ones. Over time, he found ways to adapt favorite recipes, reducing sugar, using healthier fats, focusing on protein, so that healing his metabolism did not mean losing his sense of belonging at the table. Intense cravings for sweets or refined carbs are common in metabolic syndrome. Instead of seeing them purely as lack of willpower, Jimmy came to view them as messages from a body stuck in sugar dependence. Stabilizing meals with protein and healthy fats, managing sleep, and reducing emotional stress gradually softened those voices. Like a radio slowly turning down in volume, cravings became manageable whispers instead of relentless shouts. Some viewers feel tempted to hide lifestyle experiments from their physicians, fearing disapproval. But metabolic syndrome is too serious to manage alone. Jimmy's story emphasizes collaboration, bringing food logs, home blood pressure readings, and lab trends to appointments, and being honest about changes. When doctors see respectful, prepared patients, many respond with curiosity and support. If your relationship feels dismissive, you have the right to seek a second opinion. Some people with complex metabolic syndrome explore advanced tests, LDL particle counts, C-reactive protein for inflammation, coronary calcium scores, or carotid ultrasound. These can provide additional context about risk. However, they can also add cost and anxiety if not interpreted well. Cholesterol Clarity suggests that before chasing every new test, it is wise to optimize the basics: nutrition, movement, sleep, and discuss with your physician which tests, if any, could genuinely change your management. Some people inherit genes that influence how their cholesterol responds to diet, weight loss, or medication. Jimmy met individuals whose LDL rose sharply on very low-carb, high-saturated fat diets, despite excellent triglycerides and HDL. For them, adjusting fat types, emphasizing monounsaturated fats like olive oil and avocado, or moderating saturated fat was helpful. Genes are like the cards you are dealt. Lifestyle is how you choose to play them. Neither determines everything on its own. Women with metabolic syndrome often face an additional complexity: hormonal shifts around pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause. Estrogen influences lipid metabolism, and its decline can raise LDL and alter HDL. Some women notice that the same lifestyle that once kept their numbers stable seems less effective with age. Cholesterol Clarity encourages women to see these changes not as failure, but as a sign to reevaluate with their physicians, considering both hormones and metabolism together. Cholesterol is vital for brain function. It forms part of cell membranes and myelin, the insulation around nerve fibers. Some research links metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance with cognitive decline. While the science is ongoing, the idea is sobering. The same processes that damage arteries may also cloud memory. By caring for your metabolic health through food, movement, sleep, you're not only protecting your heart, but potentially guarding the stories and relationships that make you who you are. Many people with metabolic syndrome secretly believe they are simply weak. Each failed diet seems like evidence, but Jimmy's story and the science of insulin resistance reveal another perspective. When your hormonal signals are disrupted, your appetite and cravings can feel hijacked. Healing metabolism through lowering refined carbs, managing stress, and sleeping deeply can restore some sense of agency. You are not failing. You are learning to steer with a more responsive steering wheel. In addition to lab tests, Jimmy kept simple logs: how he slept, when he felt hungry, how his clothes fit, his mood, and energy. For someone with metabolic syndrome, these subjective signals may shift even before blood work catches up. You might notice you can walk further without breathlessness, focus better, or go longer between meals. These are not small victories. They are your daily life returning. Keeping a journal can help you notice patterns and stay motivated. Even with clarity, setbacks happen. Holidays, illness, stress at work, or family crises can pull you back toward old habits. Jimmy experienced weight regain and labs that occasionally worsened. Instead of giving up, he treated these moments like detours, not dead ends. For metabolic syndrome, the long trend matters more than a single slip. Returning to stabilizing habits after a setback is itself a powerful act of healing. By the time Jimmy compiled Cholesterol Clarity, his relationship with cholesterol had transformed. What began as a source of fear became a window into his metabolism. He learned that for people with metabolic syndrome, numbers like triglycerides, HDL, blood sugar, and waist circumference often say more about risk than total cholesterol alone. This knowledge did not make him invincible, but it made him an active participant in his own care instead of a passive recipient of scary news. If you recognize yourself in the story of metabolic syndrome, expanding waistline, rising blood pressure, creeping glucose, and that ominous word cholesterol, know this: you are not broken, and you are not alone. Your first step does not have to be dramatic. It might be scheduling a visit with your doctor to review all your markers, reducing sugary drinks, walking after dinner, or adding one colorful vegetable to each meal. Before making any changes, please discuss them with a healthcare professional you trust. Your cholesterol numbers are not a sentence. They are a story waiting to be understood. Cholesterol Clarity offers a new lens on metabolic syndrome, one that honors both science and personal experience. If this video brought you even a little relief or insight, please subscribe to this channel, click like, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Then, take one small action and talk with your physician about your next step toward a clearer, more vibrant life.